G'day guys, welcome to my RXY's feature video. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about NRL Round 8 recap preview for 2020 guys. So let's get started. So starting off with this match, to kick things off, we have the Storm going up against the Roosters. Now that game was absolutely brilliant. I see the Storm were absolutely improving very well. They usually are pretty well a very good team, but they really have that energy and spark to basically win a game of football. So did the Roosters. They were trying their best to basically win a game, but obviously the Roosters didn't really make an effort to obviously get another field goal to also make a win. Plus, they think they made 2 or 1 field goal to obviously make a win anyway. But for the Melbourne Storm, though, I just think they just really are a very good team. But sometimes they do cheat a little bit. It's just because they don't have lack of maturity in that team. Because every time I see Cameron Smith in that team, he always whinges and he always just argues with the ref. And I tell you, every time you argue with the ref, you get sent off straight away. And that's how the game goes. So, really, if that's going to continue, basically, the player that I think that was Cameron Smith, he just needs to not whinge all the time. And it's really getting on my nerves that he just does it all the time. And he's not a great player if he really does that a lot. But anyway, let's move on. So it was a 27 points to 25 scoreline. It was a tight win, and by this winning margin, Brandon Smith, now this play and then that dummy half roll, Brandon Smith knocked the ball on, and it was a knock on because he fumbled it. People think that it wasn't a knock on, it was a fumble. Fumble means it's a knock on. That can explain it by people not listening to like the TV or anything like that, seeing what they think of. But it was a knock on, and Brandon Smith knocked the ball on, which that shouldn't be a win at all. But I did tip the Roosters by 8 points, and I obviously lost by 2. So we have the Melbourne Storm tries. Let's have a look at that anyway. So we have Josh Adokar, Jerome Hughes scored 2 tries obviously for a double, and Paul Momorowski, he scored 1 also too. Let's have a look at the Roosters tries too. So we have Cole Flanagan, Josh Morris scored 2 tries, and Brett Morris obviously scored 1, which he had a brilliant match anyway. But my player of the match for that game obviously went to Brett Morris from the Sydney Roosters anyway, and I think he was a real great player for that game anyway. So the next game of that match, we see the Raiders going up against the Dragons. Now, something here is on the roof. Basically, it is tapping, and it means the rain is basically tapping the roof anyway. So I do apologise if it is a bit of lack of hearing things. And plus, it is raining outside, so it does explain why it's tapping out in the roof. So I do apologise about that anyway. If you guys hear it anyway, it is the rain heading our way. So let's move on to that. So we have the Raiders going up against Dragons. This game was absolutely an average game of football. And what I can say about this game, it was a 22 points to 16 scoreline, which means it was an average match of football. But I tipped the Raiders by 14 points, and they obviously won by a couple of points anyway, which that means that they are a great team that just kills the momentum for that team. But for the Dragons though, they are a really good team, but sometimes they do win, but then sometimes they do lose. And this team, though, it was just really odd to see them losing a match, but then Matt Duffy, I can see this player really improving really well. Matt Duffy for the fullback side, he's a speedster that just kills any player, the opposition player, for the Raiders, and anyone else. but he scored 2 tries anyway, and so did Zach Lomax. But this is for the Dragons' tries anyway. But let's have a look at the Raiders' tries. So what we have is Nick Kotrick, Bailey Simonson, George Williams, and Jared Croker. Jared Croker played really well in that match, and so did George Williams. But really, for Bailey Simonson, he doesn't really play a really good match. He just goes quiet sometimes, but so does Nick Kotrick. He just doesn't really get there and just really bring a really entertaining match for that game. But my player of the game, for my prediction, this player was absolutely outstanding. Number 3 from the Raiders, Jared Croker. He is an outstanding player. I think he just deserves anything really that just comes to him. But I gotta tell you, well done to you, and you are a great player anyway. The next game of that match, we see the Eels going up against the Cowboys. Now, this game was certainly a very fired up match. The Eels are just putting things out there. They just are a really good team. Last year they were terrible, and I can definitely tell why. They've been improved, because how the way they improve, how the way they've got good players, how the way they run better, how the way they put line breaks into good breaks, and other things like that too. But it was definitely a very good match for this game. And it was definitely a 42 points to 4 win against the Cowboys. Now, the Cowboys were definitely struggling a little bit, and they were shocking across the park. But I can definitely tell why, because they were struggling, and they don't really have good enough players to have that good enough space out wide and stuff like that. But the only try that I actually scored for this game was for the Cowboys, Tom Opacek, number 4 from the Cowboys. Now, let's just say for the Eels tries, what we have here is Michael Jennings, Micah Sevo, Wanga Blake, and Jai Field. Now, Micah Sevo scored 4 tries in that game. Absolutely impressive, and I can definitely tell why he's been improving really well. It's because how the way he's so strong and how the way he can run with the ball. Now, I did tip the Eels by 10 points, and they obviously won that game by a big margin, 42 to 4. And my player of the game for this match goes to number 2 from the Parramatta Eels, Micah Sevo. He just blew me across the park, and he just absolutely just took home with a very good win of getting these points up to a standard margin anyway. And I think that game was really on top of fire anyway, but I just think that game was a standout match for the Parramatta Eels anyway. The next game of that match, we see the Titans going up against the Sharks. Now, this game is certainly a very firing up match again, like I said before for the last video. The Sharks are a really good team. They've got Sione Katoa, they've got Chad Townsend, they've got Blake Brayley in there. Wonderful players out there that could just stand out and obviously make a job winning team that just blew across the park. I did tip the Sharks by 18 points, and I obviously won 40 points to 10. That game was obviously a really good standout match. But for the Titans, they need to improve a lot better. But I know for a fact that Corey Thompson has just came into that team, but he just doesn't improve really well than he was in the West Tigers team. But since saying that, let's have a look at the Titans' tries. Now, what we have is 2 players that obviously scored for these team, and it was Corey Thompson and Anthony Don. Now, Anthony Don is a really good player, but sometimes he just struggles a little bit, but potentially he's a standout player for the Titans anyway. But let's have a look at the Sharks' tries. Now, what we have here is Braden Hamanueli, Andrew Fafita, Britton Nakora, Blake Brayley, Chad Townsend, Royce Hunt, and Bryson Goodwin. All these players here that I just recommend are talented, like young really good four packs, and plus speedsters out there like Chad Townsend, Brendan Nakora, and Bryson Goodwin. They are really good players out there. They just stand out for the team. And my player of the game, like I said before, number 7 for that match for the Cronulla Sharks, Chad Townsend. He is an absolute standout player that just kicks off with a really good play out game, and he's just a real good player that just stands out for the club. And I can definitely tell he's just really improving really well. And that game was just absolutely a standout match anyway, and they just took home with a win, away win anyway, but it was a great match for that club anyway. The next game of that match, we see the Warriors going up against the Broncos. Now, that game was certainly a really fired up match, but certainly wasn't a very big margin for this game. 26 points to 16 that scoreline was, and I went for the Broncos by 6 points, and I did lose that tip wrong, and I got that tip wrong anyway. But certainly the Warriors were playing a really good game. They just focused on how the way they want to play their game right, and they certainly did, because they did thrash the Broncos, but they didn't actually thrash them because it wasn't a big margin anyway. But what I can say for this match, the Warriors tries that I can definitely tell they have been improved really well. So let's dig in and what we have to offer. So what we have for the Warriors tries are: Ken Mamalo scored 2 tries, double. Ignatius Parsi, Wade Egan, and Isaiah Papali'i. All those 4 there was just absolutely phenomenal, and I just think they do improve really well. What we have here is for the Broncos tries. So we have Xavier Coates. He scored 2 tries, and he just develops every single game in that match. And Herbie Farnworth. Herbie Farnworth is a real standout player that just keeps rolling with the team. But my player of the match for that game, I know for a fact that Xavier Coates did really well, but I'm just going to have to give it to this player. For the winger, number 5 or number 2, I think. Yeah, number 2. For the Warriors, Ken Mamalo. He is just an absolute great player that just stands out for the team. I know for a fact he does struggle a little bit, but I just have to give this player a 10 out of 10 for this match, and he just does a really good job for his team, and certainly to make a win for their club. And it was a 26 points to 16 scoreline anyway. The next game of that match, we see the West Tigers going up against the Panthers. Now, this game was certainly a very fired up match. The West Tigers are a very good team that just certainly gets into the game and focus on how the way they want to play the ball, right? But for the Panthers, though, they are a great team. They certainly outcross Storm, I think a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it definitely was. But it was definitely 19 points to 12 scoreline. I'm not too sure if that's right, but it was definitely a 19 points to 12 scoreline, with Nathan Cleary kicking a field goal for that game. But let's have a look for the West Tigers tries. So now what we have here is Matt Eisenhuth and Tommy Talau. Now, Tommy Talau is a real development player, but he is obviously a real standout player that just gets into the match and just certainly outruns the Panthers or any type of team. But for the Panthers tries, what we have here is Stephen Crichton. Stephen Crichton scored 2 tries, double, well done for him. And Dylan Edwards. Dylan Edwards is a very good player too. And my player of the game, now this player just stands out every single time he plays the ball, every single time he plays a game, and every single match. He certainly has that talent to basically make an effort to obviously, say for instance though, like if he kicks like maybe in the 5th tackle, I think Viliame Kiko might score a try or something like that. But that's how it probably goes anyway. But my player of the match, certainly for number 7, for the Panthers, Nathan Cleary. He is this definite standout player for me, and just deserves anything he definitely chances of. But the West Tigers are a really good team, but they certainly need to improve very well. They want to be a top 8 team. They just definitely want to do that. But for the Panthers, though, they are a good team too, but they certainly need to grow their form and honestly win a game, but they certainly have. I know for a fact, but yeah, it was definitely a really good game of football anyway. The next game of that match, we see the Sea Eagles going up against the Knights. Now, this game was definitely an average match. I definitely watched it, and they weren't really improving really well for the Sea Eagles. Manly Sea Eagles are a great team, but going up against the Newcastle Knights, they didn't really aim up their game and step up their form. But the Manly Sea Eagles, though, they were improving really well. But certainly, though, they just had to lose that match. But the reason why was, it's because when the last play, when the siren sounded for the full-time siren, when I think George DeFilla ran with the ball, and then Tex Hoy came across and obviously clinched him. It wasn't a shoulder charge, it was just an elbow. That means it wasn't a shoulder charge. It was a shoulder, that means certainly he pushed him out of the way, but it definitely wasn't a shoulder charge. A shoulder charge means he came up and obviously grabbed on with another player and certainly whack, and then you're obviously down anyway. But that certainly wasn't a shoulder charge, and the Manly Sea Eagles need to learn not to whinge all the time. But I definitely tell you, Anthony Blake was definitely full of, he's just nonsense. Terrible attitude for him. But for the Newcastle Knights, though, well done for their club. They're improving really well, and certainly they have. I went for the Newcastle Knights by 16 points, and they certainly won that match by 2 points. But let's have a look at the Sea Eagles tries. So what we have here is Daly Cherry Evans. He played a really good match, and Cade Cust. He played a really good match too. Now let's have a look at the Knights tries. So we have Andrew McCulloch and Kurt Mann. And my player of the game was Andrew McCulloch, number 9 from the Newcastle Knights. He played a really standout match, and I think he's just a really good player that just gets the job done certainly really well. But it was definitely a really good win for the Newcastle Knights. But it wasn't a shoulder charge. They need to learn how to aim up their game properly. But it wasn't a shoulder charge anyway, so people need to stop blaming the Newcastle Knights for that game, because it wasn't their fault. It was definitely the Manly Sea Eagles' fault. So I just have to say it wasn't a shoulder charge, but it's definitely a really good match for the Knights that took a home win for their club anyway. And last but certainly not least, we see the Bulldogs going up against the Rabbitohs. Now this game was certainly a really fired up match, and I have to say, that game for the Bulldogs, they're just playing terrible. Every time they get the ball, they do struggle a little bit. But definitely, when Lachlan Lewis didn't play in that match, but when Brandon Wakem played in that game, he was just terrible. He just doesn't run with the ball or anything like that. He just passes it every single time he gets the ball. But when the Rabbitohs, they just came up on top, and then definitely they were a really good team. But when they played a really good match against the Bulldogs, they certainly really got the job done and took home with an absolute win. 26 points to 10, that scoreline was. And I took the Rabbitohs by 20 points, and they obviously won. But for the Bulldogs, though, they certainly need to aim up their form. This play for the Bulldogs was just absolutely terrible, and they need some improvement for that team to get, obviously, win up against anyone anyway. But Let's have a look at the Bulldogs tries. So what we have here is Marcelo Montoya and Raymond Fatala Mariner. Those two players certainly played a really good game in that match. But let's have a look at the Rabbitohs tries. So what we have here is Alex Johnston, Jaden Silva, Cody Walker and Dane Gagai. Dane Gagai played a really good game, and certainly he did. He keeps improving every single time he plays with the ball, and certainly every time he plays a good match of football. But my player of the game, like I just mentioned, Dane Gagai, number 2 for the Rabbitohs. He's just absolutely a really good player that just stands out for that club, and certainly he is just a weapon. And he certainly is, but that game was certainly a really good match anyway, and I also took the Rabbitohs by 20 points anyway. Thanks guys for watching my video, guys. Stay tuned for more. I will be doing a couple of videos coming to you guys soon. Also, I'll be doing more videos coming to you guys soon, so stay tuned for more. Plus, leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And for this video, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Till then, take care guys, stay safe, and have a good one. Plus, let's get up to 200 subscribers. We're sitting on 161 anyway, so let's get up to that anyway. Until then, guys, take care, and have a good one.